Hello, Rach.
Maths.
See, this bit's always awkward, isn't it? Because we've just had a chat and then we press record and then I have to say hello again. But here we are. Thanks for doing this. Rach is coach at MARCHON. I'll be honest, one of my favourite coaches, not just at MARCHON, in general. Um, I think similar to, well, both chats really, Chad and Gaffer. Um, Rach and I tend to connect really well. I think we share a curiosity, we share a background. Um, I don't know if Rach senses it, but I see a lot of me as a coach in Rach. Um, God help you. And so I think that's the thing. Anyway, as usual, no structure to the chat. We're just gonna have a chin wag like we always do. You will pick up on Rachel's curiosity and her very, very special mind very quickly um, as we unpack what sits behind the scenes for Rach. So let's start from the beginning of coaching for you. Talk to us about what you were before. What was life like previously?
So I guess I didn't. It's not a career that I ever thought I would go into. It was prior to being a coach. I went to uni. I did a mechanical engineering degree, and I pretty much did that because I was good at maths. I was good at physics, and it was just the done thing. So I went into that. Um, I've always been fairly sporty, so kind of just had that more of a hobby. I graduated uni during COVID, so getting a job in that field became quite hard. I did get a job in like a finance type role. I didn't particularly enjoy very much, was sat at a desk for most of the day. And a real fluke, I was just looking through LinkedIn one day and I found there was an advert for a sales position at a gym equipment design company. So I sent them an email and I said, I'm not a salesperson, but I have got an engineering degree.
Hmm.
Do you need a designer? So I ended up, I was working with them for about a year. And within that time, part of my job was to sometimes go out and speak to coaches, speak to gym owners, see what they kind of wanted from their gym. And every time I came away from those meetings, I just thought, well, I'd rather do what you do,
Mm,
as which was really cool
mm.
and frustrating because I'd then go away and design a gym that they were then going to coach in, and it was going to be really fun. Um,
At that point, were you making designs in your mind as to how you might get there, or was there just a bit of envy around what they were doing?
yeah, I think at that point I didn't necessarily think that I would then go into coaching. I just always thought I would come away and I'd be like, oh, that'd be a really cool space to train in, maybe.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Maybe from that point of view, more so. Um, and then it was during a time where I'd kind of discovered March On. I was aware of the PFCA, and I did start to think, I was like, oh, I sit at a desk all day. I love my training. I was really into CrossFit at the time. That was like my absolute like life outside of work.
Mm.
And I thought, well, maybe I get a coaching qualification and I just do it on the side, a bit of fun and something to kind of scratch that itch.
Mm.
And then I just realized I preferred my evening job to my day job. So then went all in with that. And here I am.
That took you to Australia, right?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to us about
Yeah.
that.
So I think there was probably about 3 or 4 months where I was trying to do a 9 to 5 and then do a 6 till 9
Mm.
coaching. And it was really hard because I started to realize I did prefer coaching to my engineering role. And I knew that I had to go all in with it. But I think it was more like an identity thing, like to everyone that knew me in at home, like I was Rach, I'd gone to uni, I'd done an engineering degree, and that's all I'd kind of ever thought I would do. And I think it was a bit of a like a fear factor of change changing that and almost feeling not that I failed with engineering, but just that I'd changed. So I thought if I just took this big old change, almost started from scratch, go to Australia, no one would have even known that I'd done a career that wasn't coaching. So that's what I did. I went out there, traveled for about 6 weeks, found somewhere that I liked, found a place to live, and I found a job.
So it was in your head then the idea or the desire to just make a fresh start with no
Yeah.
judgments around. It's interesting, isn't it? What were the judgments, if any, after the fact?
I think there was. I don't think I never had anyone. No one ever confirmed my fear of being judged, to be
Mm.
honest. I'm so fortunate. I've got such a supportive family. My friends are great. Um, but I think it's like whether it was a school I went to or going then to uni, there's always this I don't know, from as long as I can for as long as I can remember, it's just like your career will look like this. You'll go into engineering, you do a couple of years at this level, and then we'll put you through your chartership, and then you'll be this level, and then and you've got a really clear path laid out for you, and it's almost that feeling of, well, I did all those steps, and I've decided not to go there. So have you wasted all those steps before?
Mm.
And I think it was the fear that it was probably more of a me thing than anyone else. But
Yeah, so for
just
those who were listening and not watching, I'm nodding my head because that's what I found was that all those judgments and opinions and things that I thought I would have to face when I changed careers were actually just built up in my own head. And actually what I found was the opposite. Everybody was really, really supportive. And as well, I don't know if you experienced this, so many people said, this makes sense. This is more you than what you were doing. Um, even my boss at the time said that. So it's funny, isn't it, how we build that up and build that pressure for ourselves. A bit of a gift and a curse, though, because I think you take that into your role now. I can see that professionalism, that desire to want to find your path and find your way in this thing. So there's probably some benefits in that. But yeah, in that scenario, the reason I'm just laboring on that a little bit is because I know there'll be many people listening to this podcast who have either been through that, going through that, or are about to go through that career change coach that we speak to, and it's bloody scary. It's scary, and so listening to you then I think will fill them with a little bit of confidence. I hope, knowing where Rach is now, knowing what Rach is doing, knowing what Rach's life looks like, which we'll unpack a little bit further shortly, but a positive move, I would say.
yeah, absolutely. It was really funny that I think I remember this day. It was like I was driving back from work, and anyone that's from the Midlands, anyone that knows Nuneaton, knows it's not particularly the nicest place in the world.
Mhm.
And I was driving home, and I was driving through the streets of Nuneaton, and it's lovely and it's fine. And I just thought, God, this feels like Groundhog Day, and it's like every day kind of felt the same. And I just all I wanted to do was either go and train or go and do my coaching job after work. I was like, you can't spend 8 hours a day looking forward to your
Mm.
evening.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the most important part of all of it. Well, one of the most important parts of all this for me is that I don't clock watch. I don't dread going to work. Not that I hated my job before, actually. That's a bit, I didn't dread it. It didn't light me up.
Mm.
So what I do now just brings me so much more joy.
Yeah. Good. And I would say you're in the right place. So, what you described there, even in the career pathway, um, we know as well within the work, there's a lot of order, there's a lot of logic, there's a lot of systemized stuff. Um, even if it wasn't full engineering that you went into, that's what you learned at university. Even university is that way inclined, especially when you study to be an engineer. Um, so coaching is a lot different. How are you finding the difference? Because does your mind still operate in that way, the orderly, logical, systemized way?
Yes, and I think I was thinking about this actually recently. I used to get really frustrated because um, in more like engineering and science, you can kind of, if you don't know something, you either ask someone who you think knows more than you read a book, or you will find out the answer between those two, and it will be fairly black and white. Whereas when there's something that I don't know or I'm confused about, I either ask you and you ask me a question after I've asked you a question.
Sorry about
Or you speak to another coach and you get a different answer, or it required me to become more it required me to be more inquisitive and more um uh I don't know, more open-minded,
that. Mm,
I think is probably the word. And it's just more subjective than the field I was in before, which was very black and white, objective, right and wrong. Um, so that's just taken some getting used to. But and I still don't think I'm there. Like, I get frustrated when I don't know things or I can't find the answer. Um, or when I think I've got my head around something and then it suddenly changes. And we change the way we do things, or someone questions it. Um, it's challenging, because then like you almost go down the rabbit hole, and everything you thought then kind of unravels, and then you're back to square one. But that's kind of the point.
mm.
And that's what I've found that I actually do enjoy now. So in the sense that it's frustrating, it's also interesting, and it's probably why I won't get bored of this job.
No, and yeah, I'm with you. And if you're in it for the right reasons, for me, it's impossible to do so because the learning never stops, right? And the answers are never found. There are some truths that were uncovered along the way, but they're all context dependent. And so that's why, you know, from your experience and my prior experiences, it is a shift. And I think you've got to let go of that way of thinking. Like, I'm in search of the answer, whereas it's not I'm in search of the answer, or I'm in search of the thing to solve this problem. It's I'm in search of what I think to be the right challenge now. But that could change. We know that could change tomorrow. It will definitely change for the next person, and so on and so forth. So that then becomes the challenge, right? Where you have to be, like, you use the word inquisitive. We also talk in the PFCA, don't we, about being agile. So is that something that you've had to let go of? The lack of agility, if you like, or the fixedness that came with, and the certainty that came with engineering.
Yeah, I think so, in a way. I think it does. It got I think there is still order, um and you need to have your principles, and I guess we talk about those, and for me that's like the order, and they're the things that are somewhat fixed, like they're the big rocks that you kind of build everything around. um but yeah, I'm definitely um more comfortable with the answer of, like, it depends.
Yeah,
And it's almost like every single different person you have in front of you, it depends. It's like you might have an idea of what a squat should look like, but it really depends on the person. And that, I guess, that's kind of how I marry the order and maybe the agility. I don't know, something like that.
share the last question you asked me.
About my squat.
Mm.
Yeah, so um I video nearly everything that I do in the gym. And it's more so because I just want to unpick the way that I move in like a really methodical way.
Coach yourself.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. So I, noticed in my squats last week that I have been coming like just lifting my heels up just that little bit. So I just sent you the video and I thought, what are your thoughts on this? Yes,
And
that's where I got to.
what was your intention behind that? Why did you ask me?
I guess I asked you because I wanted to know if there was anything glaringly obvious that you could see that I couldn't.
Mm.
Like for me, I couldn't really work it out other than the fact that like maybe I just wasn't thinking, or because like I know that I know that when it's lighter, my heel stayed on the floor.
Mm.
And I know when it got heavier, my heels came up a bit.
Mm.
So I guess I was just trying to pick that apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Where we kind of got to, we had a bit of a back and forth, but where we explored a few bits and bobs. It turned out that Rach had deadlifted before she'd squatted, so maybe there was a chance that the posterior chain, to coin a phrase, was somewhat fatigued, and so she was erring on the side of the anterior by shifting the load forward. But then you went on to say, well, this tends to happen despite that, and so then we went down the very generalized way of looking at, well, perhaps just the skill isn't quite there yet, as in it can't uphold this level of intensity. It's okay when the intensity is lower, and so maybe there's just some more work to do on the skill, um, and it's as simple as that. And I know that when we reached that conclusion, you already knew that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what was the thing that was stopping you seeing that as a potential thing to consider?
I think sometimes maybe my more engineering brain or left brain just wants like logic.
Mm.
I wanted you to say, oh, well, it looks like you haven't got very good hip internal rotation, or like, do you know what I mean? I almost wanted some like proper anatomy,
Yeah,
like nerdy stuff to come out of it. That I could like go down a little rabbit hole and read about and
great.
work out why my squat was wrong. But actually, it was something a little less black and white.
Well, yeah, and I'm so glad you said that, and I actually didn't know you were going to say that, but I'm so glad you did, and thanks for being honest, because it might have been those things, but then we're just listing symptoms, and that's what the industry does, and it perhaps brainwashes coaches into thinking that these things are more important than they actually are. So there is a big section of the industry that gets off on going into the ins and outs of a cat's ass around anatomy and physiology around each joint and all the rest of it, and sort of listing all that stuff out and listing what they see. But as we teach in the PFCA in CBT, it's not just assess, don't guess. It's also only assess that which you know what to do with. And so it's all right me saying, well, you haven't got internal rotation there, and you haven't got and whatever it might be. But you're not thinking about that whilst you're moving. So we just come back to first principles. And it's like, okay, well, no matter what's happening, how do we upgrade the movement? And it's, well, let's reduce the intensity, let's increase the time under tension, let's practice it more, and then gradually ramp it back up again. And when it gets to the point where the movement starts breaking down, it's like, okay, cool, let's go back again, refine it again, and so on and so forth. And we keep nudging up in that way. And all right, there are plenty of people, the argument could be, well, there are plenty of people who can't do that, and they have they have real problems with mobility, they have problems with pain, and what have you. That's fine, but that's more of a therapeutic realm than a training realm. And I think that's where coaches get lost, is that they think that we have to bring in those more detailed anatomical thoughts into every realm of coaching. And it's just not the case. It's just like, well, let's just practice it some more, and it's fine. Let it, the one that always blows people's mind. Hey, let's be patient. Ooh.
Yeah.
But I want to add more load now. Well, yeah, well we can, but your squat's breaking down as a result. So let's practice it some more. Let's go back and do the reps. Um, I know that I can talk to that just because of my experience, I guess, and therefore my confidence in exploring, being down the rabbit hole of all that stuff. But thanks for sharing your honest thoughts there as to what you thought that might be, um, because those things all do exist, but then it's our job then to figure out, well, how much do they matter and how are we going to impact them? How are we going to upgrade these things? That's the key. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do rather than what are we going to chat about? Um, okay. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. I just wanted to get into you asking the questions. They come semi-regularly. Like every now and again, you'll ask me a question, and I love that. I invite that. I enjoy our back and forths. You've not been doing this for very long, right? How long? 3 years?
Yeah, I was working this out. I think it'll be 3 years in September. So
Cool.
yeah,
So yeah, coming up on
3 years.
3 years. You're already you're already asking questions, seeing things relating to members, clients in a way that a coach would many years your senior. What mindset do you take into this thing to be able to do that? And I know you're not thinking I want to be better than anybody else. I know you're not thinking I want to accelerate my learning, but this thing comes very naturally to you, and I'm just wondering what the mindset that sits behind the whole thing is.
Um, I think a lot of it comes from I always try and listen more than I talk. And I think that's with most of my interactions with the members, whether that's even just like coaching on the floor. Like I try even more now to say less after like conversations with you and Jen's, and just to like let people talk to me. I ask people a lot, like how they feel, um, and just really try and listen and understand and relate to that person in front of me. I think this is funny. I think this might be a bit of a rabbit hole, but
Go, go.
so so my first so I did an engineering job during my placement year, and I worked in a food factory, and I was a essentially like a reliability efficiency engineer, and this factory had been there for like 30 years. I was this 18-year-old girl coming in, or 19, whatever, with like old boys in their 60s that have been on the tools for years. And I suddenly was given the responsibility to try and like make everything as efficient as it could be. So I would, have to look at data, work out what was breaking down the most often, or just silly things like that, or whatever it might have been. And I quickly learned that you had to understand the person you were speaking to kind of get to the best result, which would ultimately be them helping me adjust the machine
Mm.
and then try it like the next week. So I kind of learned the hard way that you can't just go down to the shop floor and say, we're changing this because I think so.
Yeah.
You kind of, I would make sure I had all my reasoning. I would work out who it was I would need to go and speak to, and kind of how to get them in, how to get them on side,
Yeah.
find out what they want to chat about, what it might be. Like, it was really funny. I was probably one of 5 women out of probably about 200 people in the company at the time, so it was difficult sometimes to relate to those people, but you find, like, I think I just found a way. So I think that whole year was just a massive learning curve of really trying to understand the people in front of you. If there could be completely different background, they see the world in a completely different way, but it's like working out what makes them tick and how to get the best out of them. And I think that was just a massive learning curve for me. And you take that into I can take that into my coaching and know that, you know, some of our members are just there to have an hour of fun and play and an hour away from the kids, and you listen to them and you can hear how busy their lives are, and I don't know what that feels like. And I don't try and pretend to know what that feels like as a 27 single woman with no children, but I try and understand and listen and then give them the coaching that I think that they need.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where it all comes from, I think.
I was going to ask you this question, but I'll just tell you because I know you'll be humble in the answer. There'll be a fraction of structural engineer students who go into a setting, mechanical engineer students who go into a setting like that and are able to relate, right? Because they're not that way inclined. So whilst that scenario helped you and helped move you forward in that, would you agree that there's a big element of nature and nurture that helps you now in coaching?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to, I guess
Yeah,
it's
see,
hard
this is you being
to
humble.
decide.
I was being polite in asking you the question, but the answer is yeah. Like it's in you. It's in you. And I think um it is the humility that helps so much for you. It's you you never come across as being above. You never come across as having an answer. You're always inquisitive, you're always collaborative, you're always relating. You're on a level with everybody that you deal with, and you have a talent. That's your talent of connecting with whoever's in front of you, and also then not just that person, but whatever vibe or mood they're in. Um, and that is the coaching piece. So to that then, how do you how do you hold both coaching competence and your inquisitive, curious, analytical, logical mind and that humility, human side, empathetic quality?
Um,
Do you even think about it?
I don't think I think about it that often until it goes wrong. I don't think I get it right all the time.
Mm,
And there was an interaction with one of our members a few months ago, and she was a slightly older lady. So I was, you know, not very big. Immediately just think like a little bit on the, like, I wouldn't say frail, but just like, I just thought, right, we've got to look after you. Never strength trained before, but done a lot of yoga. So like
mm,
move, like could like understood moving her body to an extent. And I think because she had done a lot of yoga, felt and I think she'd done a bit of Pilates as well, felt like she was experienced in movement. And I don't think I understood her thought process with that before we'd had this conversation. And I'd obviously been giving her the prescriptions I believed she needed, but in doing so, probably didn't make her feel as strong as she wanted to feel
mm,
or expected to feel. And you know, she did tell me, she said, I feel like I'm not being built up in this environment. I feel like we had a really good chat, and she wasn't particularly, it wasn't a negative chat necessarily, we were really open, and then I went then into explaining why that like resistance training is a little bit different to just moving your own body, and that like this is it's not something that happened, and she'd been here for 3 weeks, and she said it's not happening quick enough. I'm not progressing quick enough. And I try to explain like that you have to be patient, and these kind of things. And we did actually end up having like a good agreement by the end of it, and we were all good. But I actually came away from the conversation and feeling really, because I think she said don't feel happy, or I don't come away feeling really built up after the sessions. And I felt so disappointed in myself. Like, I
Mm,
can't, it was awful, because that's what I pride myself on,
mm,
is like making sure that people feel empowered and confident, and they leave our sessions feeling amazing. And I'd got it wrong. I'd wrapped her up in cotton wool, because I was so far in the movement standards and that kind of thing, and I hadn't thought about the emotional side of it enough,
mm,
um, because she was on the extreme end.
mm.
So yeah, that's one thing that I've just reflected on recently and thought, that's, I didn't get that right. So
What was the outcome?
um well, she's carried on training with us, which is great.
How did that come about?
um
How did you flip it around?
um
Or did you just give it time?
so we had two chats. We had one chat at the beginning where she was quite upset, and she was actually but she said she was in a rush, so we didn't have a long enough chat to really break it down. And then we she then kind of messaged me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was in a rush. I'm, let's talk." Like, I messaged her first, and then we said, let's talk another time. So we sat down and we had a really good chat. We unpacked it all, and I just explained my thought process. And she just said, "Yeah, I was expecting quicker results." And I just said, "It's a long game. It just takes time for your body to adapt, and this is totally new to you."
Mm,
Um, and yeah, it's it's been much better. I've been more. I actually think I probably pigeonholed her into a less ambitious, um, group of people,
mm,
probably based on my own biases.
mm,
And actually, when you think about, when I step back, she was, I think, a fairly high level lawyer. She's been very successful in her career. She's still working, even as like an older, lady. And yeah, I don't think I took that. We've got such a mix of people, and we've got some people that just come in just to move and to feel good, whereas she actually wanted to come in and see the numbers go up every single day, which is more like what I would probably be like.
mm, mm.
And I just didn't think that that's how she would see the world.
Yeah, so you've seen her world through her previous fitness experiences as opposed to the whole thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So much cool stuff in there. I'm sure that prompted you to reflect on that bias of yours that you'd perhaps not seen before.
Mm.
Win for all future conversations, and knowing, your ability to adapt to things, I think that will have happened quite quickly. But then the other cool thing as well is um, the necessity for allowing time. And me and the gaffer spoke about this last week. We can't expect to say things and it just land. There's a delay. There's a process that not only us but they need to go through in order to reorganize these new things in their mind, because we've just offered them a different view of the world essentially. Um, and so it doesn't just change like that. There's some time that it takes, and willingness, right? So fingers crossed they're willing, and then the time sort of follows on after that. So yeah, that whole story, lots of good stuff in there. The biggest thing that we try and take the weight off coaches' shoulders with all the time in CPT is the reality that we will learn the most through getting it wrong. And the other reality that when we see things as being wrong, they're never catastrophic because of how much we care. Like, it might just have been the slight, like, even that. Did she notice that you had a bias around her previous activity? I doubt it. You knew it, and then you will have thought, oh, did I, project that onto her and this, that. She had no idea. As far as she was concerned, all that happened to her was there was a delay between what she wanted, what she asked for, and then when she actually got it, or when she actually got a version of it. So how wrong it was for her, probably not a lot, but so much to learn there through just taking a slight misstep.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think I'd necessarily thought about it like that, in the sense that to me it was just such amount. It was all I could think about for days. I was like, that's just can't believe can't believe I did that. I can't believe and it really made me think. And I spent, honestly, so I still think about it. Honestly, I've had a little cry about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was so, yeah, I was really like, it really made me think. It's probably like one of the key moments from like my whole coaching career, I'd say.
Yeah. There'll be
Yeah.
more. There'll be more.
Um,
It's just a reflection to you that you care. If you've not already noticed that, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Um, do you ever feel like, off the back of that, do you ever feel like you got to prove yourself?
I think, yeah, yes, in some ways. I think I'm getting better. Um, the further I get into this,
Mm.
in the sense that I think when I first started, I still care and I try and learn as much as I can, but the functional anatomy thing used to really stress me out because I hadn't done a degree in sports and exercise science. I didn't have that like qualification behind my name, and all I had was a level 2 and 3 in personal training, which um I found difficult because I think the background I'd come from is like, you go and you get a degree in engineering, and then you've done that hard work, and then you've proven you can do that, so you go and do that. Whereas I almost felt like I'd like cheated myself into an industry that, especially when you're in a business like MARCHON, where a lot of the coaches um have more like formal education, or like a professional sporting background, or all those things that, like, when you first come in, you do feel like, I think quite a lot of the first conversations we had was, what qualifications can I do, Mass? Is there any courses you can put me on? What would you recommend? That kind of thing. And I think I was always chasing a piece of paper, some kind of formal thing that would, I don't know, make me feel more
Worthy.
well, yeah.
Funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
You all think that. Everybody that I speak to at MARCHON says that in their own way. It's funny. None of you need it. None of you need it. You're doing a good job. So how do you work through that? How have you got from there, that being one of the first questions, to now? What's changed?
um
How do you lift that burden, I guess?
I think because I know that I know that I am growing, because I know that I'm curious. So even if I don't have a formal qualification, I know that I'm still pushing the needle forward. And I think that's almost becoming enough at the moment.
Good.
So it's
Good
just, I think
to
it's
hear.
becoming more of a mindset shift, and having the people around us that we do, coming away from that, like we did like a March on Coaches Day, coming away from there, and realizing that we all have the same like worries or similar insecurities, or it's I think it's that team feeling of like, we're not alone in this. And it's like, having that constant CPD every week and hearing everyone talk, and we all ask questions, and we're all given a voice, and we're not always bang on the money, and hearing people that are, coaches that are, more experienced within MARCHON or more senior within MARCHON actually admit that they got something wrong, and then, talk about that. I think it all just makes it all feel like you're not the only one that feels like you're getting it wrong. Which is really special to be a part of that kind of team, I think.
Rach, I've just spent 6 months working on something that never actually came to fruition. We all. I was gutted for a week. My head went up my ass for a week. I was like, fuck. I knew it wasn't a waste of time because I knew how much we'd learned from it, but I still felt I'd let everybody down was the thing. And I guess that's what we all share, right? Because, we're together as a team and we want to do right for everybody around us, not only ourselves. But the reality is that it was an important process to go through to get clarity on what was needed on the other side. And I think it speaks to the nature of what we do. That because it's so changeable, because it's so variable, because we're dealing with humans, it's almost impossible to have a very fixed education system. And so when we talk about engineering, when we talk about accounting, when we talk about law, when we talk about those things, architecture, whatever it is, the education needs to be such because there are definite things that you need to learn. Because there's maths involved, and it's like, well, this equals this, and that's the answer to that, and so on and so forth. And this is how you would do this, and then on top of those things that you learn at university, then there are industry things that as tech advances, well, this is how we do this, and so on and so forth. But in coaching, I think any sort of fixed education is actually detrimental because fixed education would lead you to the point where you think that you got it figured out, and it's never the truth. And so, for me, what's better in this arena is education that looks somewhat similar to the practice, in that we learn what's necessary at the time because it's relevant to what we're doing, and then we move on to the next thing. So it's like, well, I'm just going to grab a bit more information on that because I think that's going to help my decision, and then a bit more on that because that's going to help my decision. And so, whilst I can be flippant on Instagram and be very idealistic and say we don't need this and we don't need to think about this and all the rest of it. The only reason I say that is because I'm trying to get people to think, and I'm trying to drag people or jar people away from their current narrative, which is this is the answer and this is the only thing, and all the rest of it. So I can afford to be a bit of a dick because it doesn't really matter to me because I'm not coaching anybody anymore. But the reality is that we still need that detail. It's just not all it's cracked up to be. So we still need the knowledge of internal rotation and external rotation. We still need in our minds the KPIs of a squat, like what we're looking for and what we're not looking for, before we then layer it over the individualities of each client. We still need the knowledge of energy systems as we go into conditioning. We need all that stuff. We still need the nutrition stuff, the psych stuff. We build that up over time. But that just sits in our mind then as a reference point, as a library to draw on when necessary, as opposed to it being an answer. So the answer is always, as we say, who plus what plus why equals how, not the other way around, like how equals, and then we try and shoehorn that on the client. I had this discussion with Eamon this morning when we were talking about all things PFCA, and so I think I can understand for you why that will have been a challenge coming from where you've come from, and I think it's also a challenge that a lot of coaches share, that they think there's almost like a fixed textbook of knowledge that they need to learn on each subject to deem themselves worthy. Where the reality is that it's breaking away from that stuff and recognizing the things that matter is the lifetime career challenge of a coach. Sorry, that was a bit long, but
No, it's so true, and I think that's probably what I needed to hear.
yeah, yeah. What are you learning about yourself then in this process?
Um, think I already knew that I was curious, but I think I'm starting to realize even more that, like, just want to know why about things. Um, and it's not always just for, it's not necessarily always just to make my coaching practice better. I think it is just like, I genuinely think this is what I'm supposed, like, I genuinely love learning about, like, the whole shooting match, like, as you say. Like, the whole thing I just find, like, fascinating. So I think the more and more I know, the more and more I seem to learn, the more I know that I want to learn. Like a weird little cycle there. And I also think I'm starting to realize that I'm probably, it's funny because you see, like, you put people on a scale of, like, being a feeler or a thinker, and, like, I really, like, the more I think I seem to learn that I am somehow both. Like, I am the most, like, I love logic and I like structure and routine and I like to know the exact ins and outs and whys, but I also just seem to feel everything. um like, in that way as well, and I think it's similar, like, so I think that's why I can sometimes, I can quite often relate to the client in front of me that's, like, very feeling driven on the gym floor, with just wanting to, like, feel good, and they don't really care about the numbers that they lift and all that kind of thing. um and then there's also the people that just care about numbers and structure and the whys and the wheres and whatever. um so I think that's probably why I can relate to those people, because I think I sit on that whole spectrum somehow. So
I
yeah.
think I think that answers my previous question of how do you balance, or how do you manage the competence versus humility thing, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we could say that the competence was the logic side of things, and the humility was the feeling side of things, or the thinking and feeling. Um, do you ever get dragged one way or the other?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I think I can be irrational sometimes. I think I can get really pulled into the feeling side of things and think it's the end of the world.
Mm.
The smallest little thing. um,
And what are some of those things? Are they
I
your own
think
things, or is it other people's things?
I think sometimes it comes out in my own training,
Okay.
or, like, my own life, more so than it does in my work life. So, I think sometimes I'm, you know, one bad training day, and I think that I've made no progress in 6 months. Or uh, I squat when my heels come off the ground, and I
Yeah,
think that I've wasted 10 years of
yeah,
training.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, just like, feelings of frustration, um, because I really care.
Yeah.
So there's that. Um, and then, coupled with a couple of injuries that come along the way. Um, yeah, I think that I do get dragged into the feeling side of things. I think I get dragged into feelings more than I get dragged into logic,
Okay.
I think. And it's quite often I need to, like, pull myself back into my logical side,
Mm,
um, to make sense of it and move forward.
mm, mm.
So,
It's only
yeah.
natural.
Mm.
It's only natural. Do you beat yourself up about it?
Yeah. Yeah, I get frustrated because I think when I get stuck in the feelings, nothing happens.
Mm,
And it feels like, no, I'm not going anywhere. Um, and I like to always think I'm moving forward.
mm.
So pausing seems to be stressful.
Okay.
Uh, but I don't think it's probably not. And you said this to me. Um, I think, actually, you don't, I can't remember. Do you remember we had this chat a few months ago? when you're down for PFCA
Mm.
day, and I think I was getting very caught up about where I needed to be in the future. And you kind of just said, well, what's wrong with just sitting where you are now and getting better at being there? You know, I can't remember how you put it, but
No, neither can I. But I do remember the chat, and it was what I was thinking as you were explaining that was that the force to pause is probably exactly what you need,
yeah,
and then bring those emotions down and look at it somewhat rationally to try and come up with a step forward. And I think that's where it's difficult for coaches because we often find ourselves quite isolated, even if we're working in a team, right? We can be ships that pass in the night when it's busy and all the rest of it. But that's where you can use people like me. And I know that you do, but maybe perhaps more often than not, because when those things come up, for me, what I found is one of the best ways of dealing with that is just to talk about it. Is just to sort of have at it and just go, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I might not have arranged my thoughts initially, and maybe you need to get over that because I did as well as a young coach. Was like, I can't take this to anybody because I've not arranged my thoughts yet. Whereas what I didn't realize was that I needed to have the conversation and say it out loud in order to arrange my thoughts. Because whilst they're in my own head, it wasn't getting anywhere. And so yeah, maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the pause. It's like let me just pause and just organize these things, and then we move on. That might be a conversation. It might be a a written piece, whatever it might be. But coaches listening, I imagine we've all felt the same. Where it's like shit, I'm frustrated because I can't move on. I can't move on to the next level or the next thing or whatever it might be because this has happened, or like you say, my training's slowed up and all the rest of it. It's like we're at this for a long time. We're at this for a long time. Having said that, where do you want to go with this?
it's difficult. I've been thinking about this recently. And I don't really know. I think before, obviously, I was at Harpenden for a year and I loved that. And then when the opportunity came to move to Bath, I loved the idea of coming here because I always looked at the boys' experience of like building a community from scratch, and being able to kind of like shape where that went. And I thought it would be a really amazing thing, like amazing challenge and a cool thing to do. And now that I'm here, it's so special. I've actually been like, sometimes you stand back and it was really funny. Actually, today I sat on the bike for 35 minutes before coming back, jump on the call. And I just had my headphones in, so I couldn't actually hear anything that was going on the coaching floor, but the lunchtime class was going on. And you like look out on the floor and Deshaun's coaching and you've got, 10 people there. You've got, a guy in his like late 20s who's pretty strong, trained for years. You've got a few mums of varying abilities and ages. You've got a student that's back from uni who her dad's been training with us, so she's jumped in on a trial. She's never trained before and it's amazing. You've got grandmas, and like that whole kind of, but they're all, you can see them interacting. I couldn't hear what they're saying, but it wasn't just individual people moving. It was this whole like thing, and it was really like beautiful to watch. It was really cool. So I actually think, going back to the point of just kind of like pausing, I'm actually really happy where I am because we've only been open since April and the community is still building. And I think I just want to keep going with that and making that, cementing those relationships and doing the socials outside the gym. We're getting to the point now that when when you've got 20 people in a session and you're having to break people up into like people sharing barbells, it's not just the weight that you're thinking about people lifting together and what would work logically. It's more like, oh, I know that they're a chatty person. She's pretty new, but I think they'd get on because they've got this in common, because I know that their kids go to that school, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's funny, and then you get, and it takes so much time, and I think it was really frustrating at first. Obviously, we opened in April. It's now the end of August, and it takes time to really get to. We've got 180 people, so to get to grips with the personalities, who gets on, the regulars at the different times, and then you throw summer into the works, and everyone's off
Yeah.
for summer holidays, and everyone comes and trains at different times,
Yeah.
so their friends aren't there, and then they seem to feel, so it's this one big thing, and it's just I'm loving that aspect of it at the moment. So that's kind of where I want to be. I've not
Brilliant.
thought too
Brilliant.
far in the future.
Yeah. Well, then don't. And that's the danger of, I think we can have visions and what have you. And that North Star of what we'd like to be. And maybe that's just like a type of coach that you'd like to be, or the coach that you'd like to be. Like, who would I like to be those years down the line? But what they're actually doing, who knows? And again, I found this the hard way. We are guilty of rushing, I think, as human beings, onto the next thing, onto the next thing. Whereas when we do that, oftentimes we'll miss the lessons that are right in front of us. And like you say, there's so much to learn, there's so much to gain from your current experience that there's no real need to rush on from it, or feel like you need to, or feel like you need to, you know, go up a level or whatever it might be. And I know that's you're not that way inclined, but yeah, there's so much in there, right? And so much more. Like the that there are levels to it, and you've just opened up another layer there of I'm not just thinking about the weights that they're lifting, now I'm thinking about how can they connect to each other and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there'll be more layers that you will open up as you get more experienced, and the things that you're learning now will become second nature and so on and so forth. But there's so much in it. There's so much in it. And I think that's why you see coaches still coaching for many, many, many years. And we could argue and say it's a young person's game and all the rest of it, but I genuinely don't think it is. I genuinely don't think it is. I think that there just becomes a necessity for those with more experience to progress on to contribute more. But again, I had the conversation that I with Gaffer last week. I asked him where does he feel most himself, and he said on the gym floor. And I share that. If I could still coach now, I would still coach. I would love to. I miss it, and I think all coaches who are coaches at heart would want to. So, yeah, 3 years in, whilst you're excelling and doing bloody well, stick with it. Stick with it. Cool. Anything to add?
Nothing. I don't think so. Just thanks. It's been a cool chat.
Yeah, as always. Let's leave it there. I said the same to Charlie. I said the same to Gaffer. We'll chat again because there's lots for us to chat about.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Cheers, Rach.
Cool. See ya.